So welcome everybody to another episode of the Scottish Property Podcast. This is a wee special we've got here tonight, Stephen.
Yes, we are live over Zoom with about 100 of our community audience with us, and we're going to be covering a special topic that we get asked quite a lot when people join the group.
And that's what it's all about, guys. It's about building the community for us. That's why we do this. We love seeing your updates. We love catching up with you on Facebook, all your projects and stuff like that. So it's great that so many people have joined here tonight. Our main aim in this, our main, aim of doing these is to try and provide value to people. So, we've got nothing to sell. We try and cut out the bullshit. We don't sugarcoat things. We try and tell you how it is from, real people who are doing real things in property. And we're delighted to be joined by our other hosts that we've got a team now of people around the country who do the kind of live in-person networking events. So we've got all the guys on here tonight, and they're going to come in to join the discussion later on. So we're really excited to welcome them in as well.
So tonight we're going to cover the age-old topic of the newbies that I want to get started, and they always ask, how is it you get started in property? But it's not a one-size-fits-all. And Nick's kind of kindly come up with, is it 3 or 4 different scenarios, Nick, of the type of people that we're going to answer the question for? What
I'm going to do, guys, is I'm going to just kick off with a bit of a slide, the PowerPoint. I'm going to do a quick PowerPoint just for a bit educational purposes, because we are aiming it at, the complete beginners to property. So we want to give you a little bit educational first, and then we'll go into the question and answers and the chat at the end, and then get the conversation flowing. And then when you guys have got questions for us, then we'll happily answer them. So please use the chat box. There's a chat box there at the bottom of your screen. If you've got questions as we go through all this, just fire them in there, and we'll get help from Kessar and Paul going through the questions later on for all the guys too. So I don't want it to be a death by PowerPoint thing. So we're going to try and zip through this quite quickly, myself and Stephen. Then we'll bring the other guys in. As a lot of you know, we're not polished. We're not the polished article. We just try and wing it a lot of the time. So just bear with us, and we'll hope you find it of some use. All right. So I'm going to share my screen now and get this up, guys. Hopefully this is the moment of truth. Right. Okay, can you see my slides, Stephen?
Yeah, sure can.
Right, okay, that's cool. So we'll just rip through this then. So obviously on the right hand side here we have these are the rest of our hosts, as we're going to bring them in later on, so we don't want to keep them too long, because they want them to get a good bit of a chance to speak as well, and they're going to be speaking tonight. Gillian, Paul, Gary, Kessar, and the property duo. So myself, I should say, my name's Nick Ponte. If any of you don't know, I host the Scottish Property Podcast along with Stephen Clark. So we've been doing this for a couple of years now, and we absolutely love building this community. So just moving on, guys, we're just going to teach you a quick little bit, and we're going to assume you don't really know that much about property. But and we'll try, and if anybody doesn't understand the jargon as well, just put it in the chat box and we can explain it in a bit more detail. Okay. So what you've really got to start with is the why. Start with the end in mind, and there's absolutely no point in going into this if you don't have a clear vision and what you want out of property. So Stephen, feel free to jump in here at any point as well, but I've just listed these bullet points and I'll just rip through them. So here's a few reasons why you might want to get involved in property, right? So provide a passive income stream. Obviously, if you're going to buy to let,
someone's just unmuted you, Nick. Unmuted you.
So sorry about that, guys. So the passive income stream, you can escape the 9-to-5 job. We've actually got people on the call tonight who have done exactly that. They started off working in the corporate world, and it's a great example of how you can actually quit your day job and eventually get into leaving that if you're not happy in it. A lot of people love their jobs, so it's not for everybody. Income for your retirement, if you want to build up your pension pot, it could be another way. I don't even have a pension. Personally, I don't have a pension at the moment. Probably daft, because I should really have it, but I'm relying on property for my income later on in life. Build up assets to pass on to future generations. So I've got 3 kids. You know, I want something to pass on to my kids. So a lot of people have that in the back of their heads. It's a hedge against rising inflation. So at the moment, actually, just today, they announced the inflation rate has risen from 5.1% up to 5.3%. Basically, that means the cost of shit is getting more expensive. Cost of living is going up. And, you know, this is basically any cash that you have in the bank is basically dropping like a stone and devaluing. So a lot of people are buying property and assets to kind of counterbalance that so that they're not losing on the value of their savings. Become financially free. Obviously, this is a word that you hear quite a lot banded about, you know, the internet. Become financially free. It's usually they're selling a course or something like that. But, you know, we talk to a lot of people, don't we, Stephen, like on the podcast, and they have actually achieved that. We talked to a woman the other day.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is a great slide to start with, Nick, because, you know, if someone asks you how can I get started in property, you should start with the why should you get started in property and what is it? Look at that end in mind and figure out who you are, because the answers that you're going to get or the questions you're going to answer are based on the why, because this is going to really dictate the strategy. If you want to build up a cash pot to buy your own dream house, you're not going to go do buy-to-lets and earn £200 or £300 a month. But if you want to build up income for an early retirement, or, you know, escape your 9-to-5 job or replace your income from that, then, you know, a buy-to-let portfolio or an HMO portfolio or an SA portfolio might be the strategy for you. So this is the most important thing, is to start with this why.
Yeah, it's like the old Gary Vee expression. If anybody listens to Gary Vee, it's, you know, you're reverse engineering. So what you want at the end, how do you get to that point? And then you have to figure out the steps in between. Do you know what I mean? So definitely important stuff. Next one. So we are talking about, you know, some of the factors that you need to, so I mean, this really applies to any line of business, guys. If any of you run your own business, you'll look at this triangle here on the right-hand side, and, you know, it just applies to every line of business. And I put here time, money, knowledge. I've actually added one in here, luck. And this is one that, you know, I think is actually, you need a bit of luck in investing, property investing, because when I first started my first property, I bought it for £40,000 and I sold it 4 years later for £107,000. So, you know, that was luck in the market and that got me a start. Do you know what I mean? So like this applies to this current market. If you bought a property 2 years ago, 3 years ago, the chances are if it's in a decent location, then it certainly would have gone up in value. I'm not saying it's going up like it was back in the last boom times, but certainly you've probably got a bit of equity already built in there. So luck and the timing of the market as well. But if we look at, you know, these factors, time, money, knowledge, what I mean by that is with the time aspect, you know, things like viewings take up a lot of time. You have to do a lot of viewings in this current climate to, you know, get offers, even getting an offer accepted or getting a successful offer accepted on a property. Stephen, what do you think? You know, it does take up time. You were up in Aberdeen today.
I'm in the door like literally 5 minutes before this call just started. Left the house this morning at 6 o'clock in the morning. So yeah, it depends on how you manufacture your life through property. But the way myself and Nick look at it right now, it's a bit of a eyes open to eyes shut. But that's because we're building our businesses, in our property businesses, in our portfolio and flips and podcasts and other things we're involved in. So yeah,
we'll go on to the kind of like, you know, all the kind of different scenarios that you might find yourself in later. Then we'll talk about time and money sort of thing. Money, obviously, you know, you'll hear a lot about people on the internet. They'll say, you know, get into property with no money. You'll probably hear it from Stephen, actually, like get involved in property with no money, none of your own money and all that. Right. I've got to tell you, right, you do need money to get into property, right? No, you don't necessarily need your own money, but you need money.
It's a skill set that can be taught, Nicholas.
That's it. So whether it's your money or whether it's somebody else's money, you definitely need money. So knowledge, I put this knowledge in for Stephen's benefit because he can plug his course now.
No, it is. If you want to, we'll go into that in detail, I'm sure, when you put your scenarios up. But if you want to attract money, you need to have the knowledge, or no one's going to invest in you, are they? If you don't have that knowledge and know what you're doing.
Exactly. So on to the next one. what strategy? So as many of you might have seen, if you type in property investing in YouTube, you'll be bombarded by so many different videos talking about all these different ways that you can invest in property. And that's when we call that's what we call your strategy. So basically, you can't really think about your strategy until this is why I put them in this order. You can't really think about your strategy until you decide, what's the end goal. And also when you decide how much time and how much money. So strategy comes I say part 3 or 4 of the process. So this is why I put this slide in. And, there's numerous different things here. We've got buy to let, probably oh, look at that. It's a sweet moment. Stephen Clark kissing his wee daughter. Good night to bed. Get a selfie of that. So buy to let is what we're probably going to be focusing most of the time tonight, guys, but a lot of people on this call will have experience in these other strategies as well. So when we're talking about buy to let, it's just a bog standard, buying a property, renting it out to a long-term tenant. In that buy to let strategy, there is different ways that you can do it. One of the things is the buy, renovate, rent and refinance model. So we can go into that a little bit more. If anybody's wanting to learn about that, we can ask some questions about that later. A lot of us on here do that because it's a way of, if you have limited capital and you're starting with a small deposit or something for a first property, it's definitely a way of making that money keep working for you again and again. And then I've put turnkey. So, if you don't want the hassle of dealing with trades and all the rest of it, and you don't want the hassle of doing refurbishments, then turnkey properties is possibly a way for you as well. Basically, what that means is that the property is already in a state that's ready to let out pretty much. So all you need to do is employ a letting agent, hand over the keys, and then pretty much they're ready to go get the tenant in. Next down, we've got buy to flip and developments. So this is when you're buying a property, you're doing the work to a renovation, you're increasing the value of the property, and you're just putting it back on the market. Stephen's active in that. We can talk about that later. Any questions? HMO, it doesn't really work that well in Scotland as a strategy. You'll hear a lot of English people speaking about HMO. There are loads of courses down south that are doing HMO. Up here in Scotland, there is certainly a lot of HMO landlords. So basically focused in, I would say, probably mainly Glasgow, the big cities, all the big cities, Glasgow, Edinburgh, Dundee, Aberdeen, mainly focused, I would say, probably in the student market. I have heard of some people renting out to professionals as well. Personally, in Glasgow, I don't think it works because it's quite a high entry point in terms of the HMO. So if you want to buy a 4-bedroom flat in Glasgow to do an HMO, you're probably going to be talking about 250k plus in a decent area where you're going to get the student market. But we can talk about that as well. Serviced accommodation, I've done that myself. I had 5 or 6 serviced apartments in Glasgow. So if anybody's wanting to know about that, serviced apartments, serviced accommodation, guys, is basically sorry, I might be talking too much jargon here, but basically that's Airbnb, right? So to put it bluntly, Airbnb or booking.com, where you've got a flat in the city centre and you're just doing it short term, people coming for visiting just for a couple of nights, and that you've probably stayed in them yourselves. Holiday let's really good strategy at the moment because staycations are absolutely booming just now, so that's one we can talk about. Rent to rent is also another way of getting into property when you've got little or no money. You need a little bit of money to get involved in rent to rent, just the setup costs and stuff like that. It definitely can work in Scotland, and I definitely know a few people that are doing that successfully. So that's basically where you're approaching landlords. So you might see a property that the landlord's renting out and you think that could well work as an Airbnb. So you're approaching that landlord and you basically say to them, I'll take that off your hands, I'll look after it, we're going to do it on Airbnb, but you won't be bothered by any tenants, we'll take care of any maintenance and repairs, and basically you're managing that property, and so you're subletting it. Basically you are subletting the property to short-term guests. There's a lot of kind of there's legislation and stuff like that changing around that area, so there's a lot to learn in that in Scotland especially. So lastly, guys, commercial, you can get involved in commercial property. Personally, I don't have a clue about I don't have a clue about commercial. Stephen's dipped his toe in it.
Yeah, I still don't have a clue about it, to be fair, but I work way through. Nick, that was a spot on slide. It's like you've kind of thought of this through and actually done it in order, because if you're kind of looking to get started, these are the kind of the processes you would go through. Think of your why in property. Think of what resources you've got available: time, knowledge, money, funds, whatever experience you've got, resources you've got available to you. And these plot out which strategy would best suit your direction. So if you're looking to build a retirement fund and you had a bit of cash, you could go into the buy-to-let strategy. Or if you're young and starting out and the market's hot, you can go into flipping properties and bring in developments to flip projects and build up that pot. Or you didn't have very much, had a few £1,000, then rent to rent could be the strategy for you. So you can kind of see how you can fund. It's not one size fits all in property that you must buy it. Nick, you've missed out sourcing properties on this.
So I have.
Slide. You can source properties, and you can basically get the skill set to source the properties on or off the market and pass them on to other investors. Right now, it's such a valuable skill because deals are getting harder and harder to find. If you can find them, it's definitely a valuable commodity, having that skill set that you could pass them on to build up your track record and experience, and then eventually go on to joint venture with people on these projects that you source.
Yeah, and we're going to bring the property duo on who are doing a lot of sourcing at the moment up in Aberdeen. So they got good experience there. So if anybody's interested in that, definitely that'll be interesting. So, which sort of category do you guys fall into? Everybody that's listening to this, I'm going to get bombarded here by kids. Wait a minute. Kids are just going to bed. So what category do you fall into here? I've put kind of 4 different scenarios: no money and no time. Well, you're in a pretty unfortunate position, but not the end of the world, guys. For these people who complain that they've got no time, then you've really got to take a look at it. And are you actually really wanting this? Do you want this bad enough? See if you want it bad enough, you'll find the time, right? There's no excuses. See if you're in a job, like change your job. Go and get a job night shift, and then during the day, get out to viewings. Do you know what I mean? If you don't have any commitments and family and you don't need to do the school run and all the rest of it, you can do these things. No money and time, then obviously that falls into you're looking at getting private investors. Basically, you're looking for people in your network that have got cash that you can basically do stuff with in property. That's what we're talking about there. Then you've got money and no time. That's, in a good position because you can leverage other people's time. So, there's plenty of people out there like property sourcers who will find you the deals. And there's plenty of people out there who will manage the properties as well. Letting agents, so sourcers, letting agents, tradesmen can do all the work. That's a good position to be in, number 3. And obviously number 4, then, you can look at all options. Then you've got the money and the time, you're in a great position. And obviously then you might look at really focusing on, building that portfolio, project managing the refurbs. And, you might not have endless pots of cash, but you might have a good bit to get started. And then if you've got aspirations to really grow that portfolio, what we would say is that the first couple of buy-to-lets, you'd really document them, especially using social media, because if you do get to a point where you're looking for extra, investor funds and you're looking for people to invest with you, then you want to have that track record. That's absolutely vital. But have you got anything to add on that one, Stephen?
No, spot on, but I do think that the money thing that people I think people put money on a platform that you need the money to get involved in property. You don't. Raising finance is a skill set, like finding the deals, like managing refurbs, finding out how to add the value to property, and raising finance. I'm pretty sure that no one on this call, I don't know how many people's on this call now, but I'm pretty sure no one on this call has got an unlimited pot of cash. So At some point, if you're building a portfolio, your money will run out and you'll need to go out and raise private finance, angel finance, or you need to develop that skill set. So don't think that, I don't have the money section, that puts me out of 3 and 4. You've got to, even if you do have the money now, you've got to learn these skills to continue to grow it.
But again, I guess it depends, what your end goal is as well. So if you're only wanting, 4 buy-to-lets, you're in a lucky position where you've got, 100 grand. Probably not many people will be, but then that's you sorted. But anyway, I think that's pretty much it. I'm going to just, So I'm going to get it off the screen share now, guys. I don't want to bore you with too many slides. And we want to start the discussion going with our joint hosts, who I'm going to try and get in and I'm going to end the screen share. And as always, guys, if that prompted any questions, just get them straight in the chat box and we'll get around to them later on. But I would like to welcome all the rest of the hosts. And what should we do? Should we give everybody a wee introduction? Just go around everybody, Stephen, and just let them introduce themselves?
Yeah, sure.
But you had a suggestion of how to do this next bit, did you?
Well, I think you're going to talk about how to do, so each of your four scenarios are going to give some advice, and then obviously ask other hosts who have, asked them which position they were starting in, whether they had some money and no time, or had no money but time, and where they started and what advice maybe they would give to the listeners as well, because we've all got different stories and different reasons why we started in the path that we took. So it'd be quite nice to get the other hosts' experience as well.
Right. Well, I know, Gillian Green and Darren are on the call here. Hi, Jill. Would you be able to come on first and just explain this? There's kind of like, I know you kind of, you've got the time, and you got other people's money. So can you just come on, introduce yourself quickly, and then obviously let us know if you fell in any of those categories, and just explain how you kind of got started and got the momentum going, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure. Hi everyone, Jill and Darren Green. So we were just actually laughing when you were going through that, Nick, because way back, kind of nearly 6 years ago, actually, when we get started, we kind of fell into camp 1 and 2, because we had good jobs, we were really mortgageable, but I just had our first child, so we didn't have a lot of time because we were working in our jobs, and I was up and down to London, and working long hours. But I actually suddenly had a little bit of time because I was on mat leave. And then I had our second pretty quickly, so I had another mat leave. So actually, we probably did have a bit of time, but we didn't have a lot of money. We bought our first one basically on a credit card and a bridge. But
I'm not advocating that anyone does that, by the way.
Not advocating that at all.
If there's any lenders listening, close
yeah, let's get in our disclaimer right just now, right? We do not give financial advice on this.
But I mean, that's the reality for some of us. That's how we maybe had to do it, and it got us a foot in the door, and it gave us that credibility because we could showcase, well, this is something we've done. And actually, we weren't comfortable, and anyone that I work with now, I try and kind of beat this out of them. But I was just really scared about talking to people about we're in property, and we went and did a property course, and it was absolutely the best thing we did because it gave us the knowledge and gave us a ready-made network as well, which there wasn't a Scottish property podcast network around at that time. So that's basically how we did it. But then we went and we used when Stephen, when you're saying you don't need money to get in, I suppose it's you don't need your own money to get in. It would be a lot easier if you had your own money, but you don't need it. But you still need money. You just need other people's money.
Do you think a lot of people kind of get a bit kind of scared, especially when you're starting out? See, when you hear about this angel investors and all that, and you're going to get this investor funds and all that, you're not going in front. It's not like Dragon's Den or anything. You're not going in front of a panel and people judging you and all this. So basically, what we're talking about here is, you start off with your close family and friends. Basically, that's how when we talk about investors. When people are coming on, a lot of people don't want to say, I got the money off my gran, or I got the money off my auntie or something like that. Do you know what I mean? Because it makes them sound as if they're not as professional, but that's what we're talking about here.
Yeah. And I know lots of people that would hide that element of it, and it's just ego. It's just, if you are going to have someone borrowing with you, it's they'll know, like, and trust you, and therefore the people that know you best are generally going to be family and your closest friends. So it's a good place to start. It's not the only place that money can come, but it's a good place to start. And you mentioned at the top of the call, inflation is skyrocketing just now. I mean, 5% seems a little bit of a joke when energy prices are 50% higher, fuel prices are 50% higher, but inflation's only 5% higher. It feels like it's a lot more than that. So savings wise, our money's eroding over time. It's a good opportunity to have some conversations with people. So yeah, private investment is definitely good.
Excellent, guys. No, that's really good. So let's move on to Paul Cummins up there at the top there. Do you want to unmute, man? Just introduce yourself. Give us a little bit about, you know, how you got started just quickly and what sort of category you fall into or fell into.
No worries. Paul Cummins, UK property man on social media if you want to reach out or ask any questions afterwards. I live in Aberdeen. I started my business. I moved to Lanarkshire to invest in Lanarkshire. I used to work as an engineer and up in the oil and gas industry in Aberdeen. And then one January, first day back after Christmas, some accountant decided that we'd sack all the engineers and change the company strategy. So we all lost our jobs. And I kind of took the opportunity to go and do something a bit different. So I decided to start a property business, and I was in the category of lots of time. I've had no job, but no money. So I spent my money on training. I also did property courses, but I also did business courses as well. And I think that's one thing that was a bit different for me. I think most people, when they start in property, they get obsessed with the property and buy-to-lets and property strategies, but they forget to actually build a business model around it. And because I had no money, so everything I've done, I do HMOs in England, I do buy-to-lets and flips and stuff like that in Scotland. And I've sourced property and I've done refurbs for other people. So I've done a lot of different stuff to kind of build up my experience. But it is true, like when you start, because I had no money, everything I've done is through private investment. And I was the same. I started with family and friends, and it's like you said, they already knew me, they trusted me. It's people who've known me for 20 years, and they've kind of seen everything I've done a certain way, and that was what got my foot in the door.
I think there's obviously there's a mindset thing. I definitely have an issue with like lending money off people. Like the thought of losing somebody's money scares the shit out of me. But obviously, you know, I've done it. I know I can do it, but it's me changing my mindset. Eventually, I do want to be in that position where, you know, I'm going to run out of money and I'm going to look for it. But
it is a mindset thing, and you're kind of like backing yourself as well. You know, if you've built a proper business and you know you can do it and you've got a track record of doing it, I see it almost the opposite. Like, I don't see it as asking for someone's money. I genuinely see it as giving them an opportunity. Like, I have friends who've inherited money when a parent passes away or something, and they literally don't know what to do with it. And they're kind of like, can you please take it before I, excuse my language, piss it against the wall or something? Because they've never had money. And it's people, you know, there's people like that. And so you're genuinely helping them because you can make their money grow. You can do all sorts of things. Like, I've got people who've invested money for 5 years, and it's coming up to 5 years ending this August, and they're like, don't you dare give me my money back, because they're depending on the income that's given them now.
Yeah. You know. You mentioned about obviously getting training and knowledge, mate. Like, it's a really important point as well, and I totally agree with it. You know, how much should if somebody doesn't know anything about it, you know, and they're getting ads popping up on their social media, you know, you yourself, Paul, what would you pay for a good property training? Like, I mean, what's a good amount where you could get a decent education to get started?
I think that's a difficult question to answer. Like, what's worth, you know, 20 grand to one person might be worth nothing to the next person. But when I started, there wasn't a lot of ways of finding out this information. You had to go and pay 20 grand for a course. But there's so many books and podcasts, you know, even the Scottish Property Podcast, and there's so much information out there for free. If you're diligent enough, you can find out these things without having to pay very much money at all.
Where does the value come then? Because I know there's a couple of smiles here on this call. So, you know, I think that the kind of mentoring, the support, the coaching, you know, that sort of thing could be quite valuable, I could see.
The information I got from the course was good, number one. And I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now if I didn't do the training. But the network, Gillian mentioned that as well, the network that you get plugged into, for me, is where the massive value came from.
Yeah,
I've done business with lots of people that I met in the network, and even I still get mentored by a guy every month, and he's from the same network as well. There was a lot of value in that.
Cool. Excellent. Great to hear from you, Paul. Thanks for joining us. Paul's going to be doing the Dundee. Paul does the Dundee event with Kessar Salimi, who's on as well. So that'll all be happening, kicking off. By the way, all the guys that you're hearing talking here, they've all done podcast interview with us as well. So if you go in the back catalogue of the podcast show, you can go and listen to their full stories. Kessar Salimi, how you doing? Property investor and mortgage broker.
Thanks for having me on, Nick.
Good to see you. So what, you've been listening to chat here. You saw the scenarios there. You were a little bit different. Your family had a buy-to-let portfolio back in the day, but then, you've got an interesting story. Just quickly.
Yeah, just very briefly, basically, we invested in property pre-2008 and lost it all. But kind of my property journey sort of post-2008 started in 2010. I kind of came under scenario one, didn't really have much money or time because I was working a full-time job. Really what I did was read Rich Dad Poor Dad and kind of started to understand the difference between assets and liabilities. The sports car that I had that I thought was so cool, decided to sell that, and with that I used that money to invest in property. And alongside that, money saving expert, Martin Lewis, I think he was a great help to me at the time, helped me get my finances in order. I started to kind of save more money, and basically all the money that I had, I just started plowing into property. I've never gone down the angel investor route. I'm not saying that it's a bad idea to do that. I've just always kind of saved my own money and done it that way. And the rents that I was getting in, continued to kind of save those in, and that kind of snowballed from 1 to 2 to 3 to kind of where I am now, luckily to be in a position to be financially free.
Guys, and the great thing about Kessar as well, he can answer all your mortgage questions too. So for younger generation out there, who are starting off with mortgage lending, it can be quite tricky. So anybody who's got those questions, if anybody's self-employed as well, there's always that thing where self-employed can be a little bit harder as well, a little bit trickier. So get your questions into Kessar. Thanks very much, Kessar. That was brilliant. Gary Wales is next on the lineup here. Gary, how you doing?
How you doing, Nick? You all right? Let me just get that video on. Yep.
So we all piled through Edinburgh last week, and we were at Gary's networking event. So it was great to meet up with everybody. First time we met in person, so really good.
Yeah, no, that was good. It was good. Yeah, obviously got a sellout as well, which was fantastic. But not too dissimilar to some of the other guys. Basically down the route of property education. How did I get there? A little bit of mishaps, parents passing, a little bit of realization, like what am I doing? Me and the wife went on the journey, together. Pretty much tied up in the rat race, and we probably like option one, where we never thought we had time, and we certainly didn't have the capital. So what capital we did have, we put into property education. And then, of course, started time blocking our evenings, and all of a sudden we had the time. But again, quite similar again to Kessar there, where I sort of stumbled it with the Rich Dad Poor Dad sort of book, when the assets, liabilities, and then came across the courses, and then that's when it kind of snowballed from there. But yeah,
Rich Dad Poor Dad. I mean, I'm getting from this call, Rich Dad Poor Dad's an absolute must for everybody, just as a pure starting point, just to understand how to build the assets and basically how to understand, stop pissing your money away.
Pretty much, yeah. Well, it's that one. You don't know it until you find out something else. But with the network that you get into, you soon kind of start taking nuggets from everybody, and yeah, you start screwing the head on, so to speak. But it was just the idea of the whole, could you do it without any money? That was the big thing for us. It's like, where do we sign? Because that was it. We just kind of realised that we just, even the year before it, we'd spent X amount of money on double glazing and holidays and stuff like that, and but we were like similar to Paul, we chucked 20 grand into a property education course, and it was like, well, it needs to work, and thankfully it did. But it's a network. Ultimately, yes, you've got the blueprint. You're usually given a few blueprints depending on what courses you take and stuff, but it's always down to you. It's like what you're doing in the evening and what action are you taking really to back it up.
I think that's a really good point about, spending on the luxuries as well, because some people might think, I can't get 20 grand or 25 grand together for a deposit in a first flat. But see if you actually look at your outgoings, see how much you're paying for those 2 cars on finance payments, see how much you're paying for the holidays and all that. see if you really want it, you'll find a way as well with saving. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly. And the thing is, I mean, that's only, like Paul's saying, is like that was kind of what the options were. But now, you know, everyone's kind of wanting to know more and more about property, and, you know, podcasts are popping up and people are offering free workshops, etc. So it doesn't have to be that way, but definitely just listen more than think, you know, and just take sound bites from people, and, you know, see what works and see what sticks.
And I think when Gary talks about escaping the rat race, it wasn't exactly in a 9-to-5 job. Gary, what did you used to do?
Well, it felt like years ago that was. I used to be a footballer, but the corporate style was, you know, I was still an estate agent and a surveyor. So,
That was after the football. What strategy do you do now, mate? Just so that people can ask questions later on.
We're still adding to the serviced accommodation. We started like most people do with the buy-to-lets. And the reason that most people are suggested to do that is because any mistakes, it tends to be not so costly. So if you're starting out, it's probably the safest point to start with, and just get a wee bit of experience of dealing with certain services and people. But, you know, it's not the only way. I know people that will just go straight into big stuff, but what we do now is we're still adding to the service accommodation, but we're looking to go into commercial just now. And I actually had a chat with my mentor today and kind of nailed it down. So I might even just put it out there just to have a go at it and, you know, back myself. Just, you know, sort of. So we're going to look into some hotels just now. So that's what we're going to do.
Nice.
But there's still a capital venture to be done this year with a project as well, so we can get some dosh back in.
Good stuff. The Property Duo trademark. The Property Duo. How you doing?
Love how you always say that, Nick. Good. How are you
It's just
guys?
in case anybody's like thinking about coming up with a brand name or a new company, and they're thinking that'd be good. Well, it's already taken, guys. Unfortunately.
Already taken. Yeah, I see so many people on the call. I can't see Jade now. She was on my screen and now she's gone. But we're not together. There you are. No, I can see you there. So Jade and I make up the Property Duo, hence the name. And we've been trading as Property Duo for the last, I think it's just over 18 months now. We've been in the Property Duo brand. But how we started out was, well, background, Jade and I, we are best friends forever, last 26 years or so. And we've been in corporate roles, and that was for the 15 years we were in the corporate side. I really wanted to get out of the rat race, and we thought of property quite a few years back now when we bought our first buy-to-let in 2013, and really just looked at it as something for retirement instead of a pension, and eventually try and get out of the rat race that way. But as we moved forward and we got more and more sick of being in those jobs, we decided to get educated as well, like a lot of people have started too, in terms of actually setting up their property business. So we did some education and then decided that alongside our buy-to-lets, that sourcing was a good strategy for us as well. So we are doing the buy-to-lets for ourselves, doing flips this year as well, and then concentrating on sourcing quite heavily for the cash flow. Because for us, I know for some areas and some people it doesn't really work, but for us it's worked really, really well. So we can obviously go into that a little bit further as we go along.
That's great. So I think, guys, we've got pretty much every aspect, every strategy covered here. So it's probably pretty rare that you'll get this. So we want to try and give out as much value to you guys as possible. This is where the real good stuff happens. We want to get in your questions, guys. So question and answer sessions, I'm sure it'll start flowing once all the questions come in, and we can just bat them off to the various hosts. Because
we've had some questions in the chat, Nick. I've been watching it as we've been going along.
That's great. Let's just get going, Paul. You can read them out if you want.
There was three main ones so far. I can answer the first one if you want as well. The first one was about what returns are people giving private investors, and there's been a bit of a chat around that. And I think someone kind of already touched on it. It's, for me personally, it's very varied. It's almost like getting a direct to vendor deal. Like, what do they want? Well, if you listen to them closely enough, you'll find out what they want. Initially, I used to offer people 10% a year. But what I found was I actually lost investors because of that, because some people think that's too good to be true. So like if they're used to getting, I don't know, 1 or 2% savings or return on their savings, and you're offering them 10%, they're like, that can't be true. Like I just don't believe you can do that. So like some people are comfortable at 6, 8, you know, some at 10. I've given people higher than that sometimes for short-term loans. So like, you know, you've got a project finishing and a project starting, but there's a gap in the middle. I need 30 grand for a couple of months. You know, do you want 12, 15% on your money type thing? I've done that. So for me, it's really varied. It's more about listening to what the person wants. Like just ask them what do you want, and you'd be surprised what they'll say and what they're comfortable.
And just while we're on the thing, guys, with private investment and that, because it take me a while to get my head around this as well, right? So just talking round numbers, right? Say you're taking £100,000 from somebody, right? Like, so you're saying, you know, offer them 10%. So how does that work then? When do they get the £100,000 back plus their 10%? Can you give us a kind of typical scenario?
I've got 2 offers generally, once I know kind of where they're at. So let's just say it's 10%. It's an easy number to talk about. They either get 10% and they get their interest at the end of the year, every year, or they get 8% and they get it every month. Right. It's just, again, it depends on what they want. Some people.
And you need to give them back their initial £100,000 plus the 10%.
Yeah.
Oh, all right, okay. No, some people keep it rolling. Some people keep it going, don't they? Into the next property, they kind of like, the investor says, "Oh, I don't need my £100,000 back. Go and buy another property and give me back another." No, is that not how it works?
But then it's a brand new contract. If you've signed up someone for a year and the contract ends, then if you're inverted commas keeping your money, then it's a new contract. So you agree, you know, right, let's do it for another year. Let's do it for 3 years. Let's do it for 5 years, whatever. You don't just, you know, keep the money and run. Because
I think the biggest thing with private investor finance as well is and for anyone starting out, is factor it into your deal what you can actually pay. No different whether you use bridging finance, a normal mortgage. Factor in that you can afford the operation and the running costs off it, and if that number works for your deal, then you can offer that return, and you'll know where you can offer to. If you're needing that extra bit of cash flow, and you know you can offer as, you know, little as 4 or 5%, but you can go all the way up to 11 or 12. Start off, it's a negotiations like anything else, and see where it fits both parties. But that ultimately it has to work for your criteria and what deal it's going into. And like kind of Paul touched on as well, if you're doing a flip where there's a phenomenal profit in it, you could afford to give that a little bit more. Whereas if you're doing a buy to let or BRR strategy and the numbers are a bit tighter, you might only be able to give 4 or 5, 6%.
And guys, if I'm a private investor, right, and I've got £50,000 in the bank, right, I like the sounds of property, right? Why would I not just buy property myself? Why would I give it to you? Because
it's not property investment. No matter what everyone says, is not passive. I mean, I'm the most passive investor I think you can get, because you know my opinion on this, Nick. I do not self-manage. I hand it straight to a management agent, but I still got to source it. I still got to find it. I still got to then manage the agent even at the back end. If there's something goes wrong, you know, and the agent, you know, the agent is going to say, "Oh, there's a boiler breakdown," they're still going to go on the phone to me and ask me to deal with this problem or get my advice or get my approval. So it's not passive. Whereas handing it to an investor that's doing it and has a track record is completely passive. You have to do nothing. You hand it to them and you get your return. Whereas property isn't passive.
Yeah, same as that. If you've got 50 grand in the bank and you've never bought a rental property and you're thinking about buying 1 or maybe 2, it's not going to be worth it at all. You know, by the time you factor in maintenance, voids, hassle, it's just not worth it. If you're doing that versus, you know, going at property and starting a business, and that's completely different. But just to hand your money to somebody and they give you probably better returns than what you'd be getting in rent anyway, it's just no brainer.
I completely agree with that. I'm a firm believer on that, and I start that, you know, at the start of my workshops talking about it, that if you're intentional to build up a buy-to-let portfolio, unless you're thinking of scale, it really isn't worth it, because you've got so much compliance now. You've got your tax changes, like really has to be in a limited company at scale. So you've got accountancy fees. It has to be a proper decent portfolio to be kind of worth it now.
Does anyone else want to chip into this conversation, guys?
On that sort of that scenario that you put out there, Nick, there's nothing to stop the investor who's, you know, saying, like, why don't I do it myself with the 50 grand? There's nothing to stop them saying, well, if I give you my 50 grand and you can show me how it works, there's nothing to say you couldn't do that and see, you know, maybe they could get some education on it, go through it and see it firsthand. And obviously it's sort of ticking both boxes.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, guys, I think obviously, I really think this is a thing because there's a lot of people out there with savings in the bank, especially after lockdown. A lot of people actually came out better off than they went in because, we weren't spending money on holidays. We weren't able to go shopping. We weren't able to go out for meals. A lot of people, this is why tradesmen are so busy. People are getting extensions on the houses and all that. They've got to spare 20, 30 grand in the bank. A lot of people do. So, there's definitely plenty of people with money out there. That's for sure. So any other questions?
I'm just looking through the questions. There's a couple on property education, and all I'm going to say is do your due diligence on the people you're away to invest with. I think the property education industry is starting to change now. So the beauty of social media now in stories is look at the people you're following. People have mentioned them on the chat. Check them out if they're actually doing property or they're just selling you the dream before you go and invest some money with the people.
There's two types of people do property or teach property training. One kind does property and teaches you how to do it, and one kind makes the money from training courses. That's it, really.
And I see Susan Actmill on here as well. Hi, Susan. And we did a cracking podcast, which is going to be released next week about, doing your due diligence on people. And, all you need to do, a lot of these property gurus and trainers is just type their name into Company's House. Susan says it all the time. Company House is your friend. Stick their name in there, and that will tell you a lot about that. Follow them on social media. If you follow Stephen, for example, he's Scotland's top guru, but you can actually see he's he's actually doing the do. Do you know what I mean? You can see what he's doing in property, whereas there's a few, not to name any names, because that could get us into bother. But there's a few out there that I would have my suspicions about how much money they actually make from property. And, you want to learn from somebody who's actually doing it.
This industry changes day to day as well. Lending's one of the biggest things that changes constantly, as Kessar and a lot of the investors will know. So if you're not doing these deals day in, day out, you'll miss crucial bits of information that's the glue from the theory to the actual practicality of doing property and building a portfolio or flipping or whatever strategy you want to do. If you've not got these wee pieces of glue in the middle, it's the difference between being able to do it and not being able to do it, and having the knowledge and not being able to put it into practice.
We also spoke to a guy who's come out just recently in the podcast, a guy called Kazi, based down in London. Really great idea for those people who have got the time and, younger people, probably not with families and all the rest of it, but about, contacting people, developers, people who are out there on building sites and stuff like that, learning from them, offering your time, but my question to him was, how do you go about that without becoming a pest? Because nobody wants somebody hanging about a building site who's just getting in the road. Do you know what I mean? So he said, if you can offer somebody something, it could be that you're good with, doing social media or something like that, or you're maybe a videographer, because somebody contacted me through Instagram. It's a videographer, really cracking guy, excellent guy. And he's offered his services just to come along, be part of our network. And he offered that. We're like, absolutely, be part of our team. Come as many times as you want. Do you know what I mean? Because he's offering something. So that person's getting something in return. So that's a good way as well, guys, just reaching out to people that way.
See, on that point as well, I'm looking at starting something new either this year or next year, building some new build houses. And I've reached out to loads of people and asked them if, tag along to what they're doing, because they're either experienced developers or they're just getting started in development. I've yet to have someone say no. If you're just nothing other than keen and genuinely interested to learn, because what I find with people like that is they all say to me, nobody's ever asked me to actually come and spend time with me, or ask me questions, or ask me how I got here type thing. So they're actually quite happy to help and tell you their story and tell you how they got started.
I did. I came and visited you, mate.
Yeah, you did.
If you go into Google, type in Paul Cummins, you'll see a YouTube video of me and Paul going around one of his developments down in New Mills.
Yeah, and I had a concussion at the same time, so it's not a very good interview, is it?
I think the key is to kind of figure out where you can add a lot of value but not be a pest, because if someone is a busy developer or busy in their business, the last thing you want is someone tagging along for a free fucking ride, really. But if you could, like Nick said, if you can provide a little bit of value and help out, then people will be more than willing to kind of, return that value by adding value to what you're looking for as well.
So I'm going to put Stephen Clark's phone number here on the chat. If anybody wants to meet up with him for a coffee, then just feel free to. He's quite happily to oblige. Moving on. So any more questions, Paul?
There was one for Kessar about mortgages. It's a little vague, but it basically says what's the cheapest you can get a mortgage for. I don't know if that's interest rates or highest loan to value. I'm not sure.
Is that the one from Philip Stewart?
It's one of the very first ones. I've lost track of it now. Sorry, does that much?
Yeah, I think what he means is kind of what's the lowest value on a property you can get a mortgage for. So, right. I mean, in general terms, 50,000 is the minimum. There are options below 50,000. You've got a few options where you can bundle properties together and get mortgages on them to bring them, to kind of get like a portfolio deal. But in general terms, 50,000 is the minimum. But I've done mortgages on properties as low as 20,000. So anything's possible, but at a price.
What about age, Kessar? Can I ask about age for, buy-to-let mortgages?
Yeah, great question, Nick. A lot of older investors are worried about the end of terms because, in the olden days, you had to have the mortgages paid off by retirement age. But now a lot of the buy-to-let lenders will go right up to age 100, 120, or some have got no maximum age. So age is definitely not an issue.
What about when you're at the other end of the scale? What's the minimum?
Yeah, that's a good question. So some lenders will do from age 18, but most of the lenders kind of come in around age 21.
Yeah. And I think obviously something that we've not talked about, and we don't have any tax advisors or accountants on, but another critical thing when you're considering starting out is to get tax advice, especially now with the latest changes around Section 24 and all the rest of it. We'll not go into it because there's nobody really knows on here, I think, what we're talking about. Well, we know what we're talking about, but you need to get solid professional advice on the tax thing. It's really crucial. Whether you go personal name or limited company, it's one of the biggest questions that everybody asks right at the start. So, how are we doing? Guys,
there was a question about refurbs as well, and just do all refurbs require dealing with building regs?
No, not necessarily. No. Depending if you're not moving nothing that requires a building regulation. If it's just a cosmetic renovation, it doesn't require a building warrant. But if you move walls or change the layout or change openings, then technically it requires a building warrant. Or if you try and do a 1 to 2 bed conversion, you're changing the kitchen or any kind of layout change, then it will require a building warrant. And you'll require that for your refinancing or when you go to sell it. So the answer is no.
It's something that putting off a lot of people. People I speak to, it's putting them off doing kind of bigger developments at the moment. Well, when we talk about bigger developments, for me, I'm talking about, say, maybe you're doing like something structural, or you're putting on, extension or going up or out the back or something, because a lot of the councils, the local authorities, are really struggling with keeping up with the whole planning and the admin, and there's huge backlogs. So, things are taking forever with the council. I'm in Glasgow, right? Glasgow City Council, they're notorious for taking ages to respond to anything. But I've heard with the planning thing, it depends where you are in the country, but things can be really slow there.
I'd like to know who GQ Homes are, because they reckon that their favorite podcast episode was the one where I was interviewed. So they're my new favorite people.
Is that your ma?
I paid her to come on and say that. There was a question there where I think Stephen's already commented on it. Why haven't you two guys done deals together?
My reply was that Nick's too tight and he's too young to be an angel investor, he says. However, the podcast is a joint venture, so to speak. So that not all joint ventures need to be in a deal basis or property. This is a joint venture where the two is. I am completely, relying on Nick on this, and he kind of feels like responsible to me. So it's been quite a good joint venture on this podcast. If I'd done this on my own and Nick done this on his own, this wouldn't be going 2 years later. So I see that as a successful joint venture.
Absolutely. And I think, the day will come. It will come, because we've built up so much trust in each other. I completely 100% trust Stephen. I don't quite trust him giving them 50 grand yet, because he did ask me for
See
that.
that guys are looking for money. Look how long it takes to actually build up this know, like, and trust. I've been doing a podcast with him every week for 2 years, and he still won't give me his 100 grand.
I can trust him to turn up for a podcast interview. I can't trust him with the money. No way. Nah, it's not going to happen. But
I just thought like a question there, sorry, so something we were discussing earlier about scale. I think Elizabeth have asked it. How, when you say scale, how many is it? For me, I think personally it's got to be over 20, but again, it depends on your own personal circumstances. If you were to kind of put a cash flow, you put a stress test on your buy-to-let of maybe 5% mortgage. If you look at the cash flow and it comes back at 200 quid a month from that, 250 quid a month, 10 or 20, you think that you're going to make 2.5 grand or 5 grand a month. But in the reality of it, you've got voids, maintenance issues, communal repairs, there'll always be something that comes up. So that income's never really that income. So take it that little bit more. And if you only really want to, if you want to do and have a handful, like Nick had mentioned, 4 or 5, I just think that it's not worth it by the time you pay your accountancy fees, plus these voids, maintenance fees, compliance, your management agent. I always factor in 10% from a management agent and 10% from a maintenance as well. So there's a lot of things to factor in. So that's why I think for me personally, it's scale, but I think it'd be quite useful to put that out to the other hosts, because I think everyone else builds buy-to-let portfolios as well.
I was going to bring in Gillian Green here, because when we do basic buy-to-let, the numbers are pretty boring. It's no sexy, man. It's like in Glasgow, most of my buy-to-let, so maybe cash flow in 250, 300 pounds a month. Do you know what I mean? It's going to take a lot of 250 pounds a month to get.
I just got a 600 pound a month one in Aberdeen.
There you go, mate. There you go. But what I was getting at is, right, Aberdeen's a whole other podcast.
Just because you slate Aberdeen's cash flow, I just thought I'd put that in there. Sorry.
Right, I'm gonna bring in Paul here now, because he's gonna batter you now, because like we had a conversation back in last week at Edinburgh about Aberdeen, the Aberdeen market, and Paul was like anti-Aberdeen, Stephen was pro-Aberdeen, so there was a bit of a wee battle there that we had. It was quite a good wee face-off. So anyway, I was going to bring in the Greens, because you guys, because I listen to podcasts down England that you hear like cash flow figures of these HMOs, you're like at £2,000 a month and stuff. So you guys have gone to Liverpool to do an HMO. So what sort of figures are you getting down there?
Yeah, do you want to answer that, Darren?
Yeah, I can do. So I mean, typical sort of 5-6 beds. Like down there's larger units, but personally, if we were doing more HMOs, we'd probably stick them around about, probably a small HMO, 4, 5, 6 beds, because I just think you run into more challenges the more people you have living together. But it works for me more down south, because there is a shortage of housing, and it's not great, but this is the reality of the market that we're in. So income wise, you're usually talking about 2 grand, 2.5 maybe for a 6 bed, and roughly speaking, you probably expect to cash flow about half of that. So yes, you've got to pick up all voids, you've got to pay for everything. There's like the highest speed broadband. They probably have better broadband than I have. They've got Netflix on the TV. Utilities are all paid for, so you've got to manage that with a thermostat, and generally the heating's on non-stop. So there's a lot of cost to consider with it. But yeah, generally that's what I'd probably be looking at. Around a 5-6 bed, you'd maybe be cash flowing about the range of about 4 to maybe 5 buy-to-lets, depending on what you cash flow. So you can scale a little bit quicker by looking at that type of model, but HMOs aren't for everyone. It really depends on your strategy.
Yeah, and I think just to add to that, like I actually, when we started investing, I had no intention ever to do an HMO, like absolutely none. Didn't interest me whatsoever. But when you look at the numbers, you can see why I was turned. And the other reason why we went down that route was, if you think about it, like it's different if you're doing portfolios and stuff like that of buy-to-lets, but if you're continuously doing single buy-to-lets, like, and you're doing buy refurb refinance, you're like got one purchase, one refurb, one refinance, and yeah, like I love buy-to-lets. Like they're so simple once they're all set up. like apart from the odd void and odd maintenance thing, they're as simple as you get once you've got like your cookie cutter approach. But I was getting really tired of doing all the refinances, the individual ones. So actually with the HMO, like the purchase price wasn't that vastly over like what some of our buy-to-let purchase prices are now. But our refurb was 3 times the amount of a normal refurb. But it was one purchase, one refurb, one refinance. And the refinance bit, like I know you're really good, Kessar, and like the broker we use is really good, but it still can be a painful process. So that's another reason why I quite like maybe doing some of the ones that give you a slightly bigger cash flow, but it's not without its problems. It's a lot more to manage, a lot more things can go wrong, and obviously that can impact things as well. But but I think we wouldn't have gone and done the HMO if we hadn't done the buy-to-lets before that.
Yeah. Did you guys look at Scotland to do HMO at all, or did it just?
No, yeah, you touched on it earlier on. There's people that are doing them. There's people in my network. Paul, you maybe know people as well that run HMOs in Scotland, and hat off to them for doing it and finding it. It feels like it generally revolves around the student market, and if you look at the West Coast, geographically I don't want to go too far. I know Liverpool is a lot further than Aberdeen, but yeah, if you look at Glasgow, a lot of stuff over at like the West End, what you're paying for like a 2 or a 3 bed flat to make that as a small HMO, you'd be able to spend that money, in two HMO projects, driving maybe 3-4 times the value down south. So for me, it was just on a numbers basis, it doesn't really work for me because prices are too high in the areas that we would want to go in. And to be honest, there's a lot of developers in that space as well. So you see all these massive projects across kind of the key cities across Scotland, and they're all catering to that market. So it's difficult to get a foothold in there if you're just playing small time players like us.
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting. And guys, you bring up the point, thinking about location as well, which is another thing you need to think about when you're starting to invest in property. Where, whether it be you go to Aberdeen or Liverpool, you need to know that you don't necessarily need to invest in your own backyard. It's a good point. And if you're in Edinburgh where the prices are really high, extortionate, it might not make sense to invest in Edinburgh. You got to look at broaden your horizons. I mean, I've gone Glasgow plus 10 miles just lately. That's quite wide for me, do you know what I mean? So
we've done a podcast covering this as well, Nick. I don't know which episode it is, maybe someone can bring it up, but starting out, I'd probably tend to disagree with what Nick said there. I would start very local because there's little micro economies in the town you're in, and only you'll know them. As my gran stayed in that street, my uncle lived there, my cousin lived there, because if you look at it from a distance into a city you do not know, from one end of the street to the other end of the street could be a completely different comparable for a 2-bedroom flat, because there's a junkies housing association at the end that you don't know about, and it's only local knowledge that kind of gives you that knowledge that means there's a fluctuation in price, and having that local knowledge kind of is key. But when you become more experienced, I think you can go a little bit further afield because you can use the principles and you're a bit more experienced to kind of spot the downside a lot better.
And there's the reason why we don't do property deals together. So, but it makes for a good podcast because we disagree all the time. No, that's good. Guys, property duo girls, we've not heard much from them. And I think this is a huge strategy that a lot of people want to do. So property sourcing, who's got the questions for, Steph and Jade on property sourcing? Because I'm sure there must be a few there. It's definitely a great strategy to get started, Stephen.
Yeah, absolutely. For cash flow, it's a phenomenal strategy. The girls are doing a fantastic job in Aberdeen. I just bought a deal off them last month. It's a cracking one. And people have asked us before, would you pay for sourcer? Of course you would. When they bring in quality deals, it saves you going and hunting through, sifting through all the market to find it. They brought it to me package, so it's good to go. So yeah, anyone got any questions at all for sourcing? Because it's a good strategy to start with when you're kind of starting out as well, or even when you're not. If you've got, if you just extra cash flow, if there's deals that come to you. I remember before I knew what sourcing was, starting out that I'd pass up so many opportunities because I didn't know how to finance them. And then you look back going, shit, I know what sourcing is now. I could have like cashed in on these opportunities that I couldn't take.
I think that's the thing, and what you're talking about as well, that the sourcing, like I didn't even know what really that word was until I did the property education, because it's only really in the education that you understand what the sourcing is. So for anyone that doesn't know, I'm sure everyone does, but it's basically doing what we're doing for ourselves, so building our portfolio for buy to lets, and then just doing it for clients and charging a fee and doing a hands-off investment. So we find the deal for them, below market value deals. We're just concentrating on the Aberdeen market at the moment, package that deal within their criteria, and then they purchase the property and we project manage that with our teams up here, our building teams. So
how do you weed out the time wasters? Because there's a lot of people that obviously talk a lot of shite in property. So how do you cut out the time wasters? Have you got a process for that?
You mean when working with investors, Nick?
Yes, Jade, aye. So, you know, you'll get people, I mean, you put a post on LinkedIn, you get about 500 people liking it, and I'm sure you get asked for a few coffees as well. So
Steph's got a great way of weeding them out, which I didn't believe in to start with, but she's proven the concept time and time again recently. She charges up front. You'll pay for the deal up front, or she won't waste her time with you, which I didn't believe in it. I didn't think that people would pay up front, but you make it work, don't you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think if people are serious, they put the money where their mouth is. If they're really like serious in investing in property, it's more about the deal than anything else, sort of thing.
Yeah.
So money up front and contract signed, basically.
Yeah, 100%.
So there's commitment on both sides there.
That's good. That's good to know. I think too many people are, and you know, you guys, you need to think, if you're starting out this and you're going out doing viewings and stuff like that, you're building a relationship with the estate agents, you're going to be bumping into the same estate agents again and again and again. If one deal falls through, you damage your reputation. You know, it's your reputation that's on the line here. It's not the investor, because like they never met the investor. Do you know what I mean? It's your reputation.
Yeah, it's the time we save for people as well. Like you're talking about, like the lack of time. That's why a lot of our clients come to us as well, or the lack of knowledge as well. So they're not interested in really going on property courses, learning about the education side. They're more interested in getting their buy to lets without any hassle. So that's what we're finding as well, that it's either lack of time, or not interested in getting in the knowledge for it because they're using a trusted partner, basically.
What Nick just touched on there as well was quite an interesting point about the relationship with the estate agents. If you don't follow through with what you say you're going to do, you kind of ruin your reputation with one deal. And then we had one today, actually, an investor's just pulled out, and because we like the deals that the girls are sourcing are phenomenal. It's like, don't worry about it. If they're that good, that I'll take it from my portfolio, or the girls will add it to their portfolio, so we know we're going to exit that deal no matter what.
Yeah, and it's been a good business for us, because Jade and I have been really focused on our buy to lets, but we're not having to touch that rental income because the sourcing business is doing so well for us. I mean, we made 6 figures in the last 5 months in it, so it's not like just kind of play money. It's really good cash flow and income for our business, really.
There was a question there, guys, about sourcing. How do you stop someone cutting you out of the deal, was basically the question.
How do we stop someone from cutting us out of the deal? What, taking the deal? So we would ask the investors to sign the terms. So that's within that agreement, and they usually pay the fee up front. We do sometimes do it like a small client database if we've got people that have taken deals off us before, so we trust them already. And then we usually use our solicitors as well. So if there's any kind of funny business, which thankfully there hasn't been already, then we've got that agreement with our solicitor that they won't proceed with the deal, and then we would take ourselves or pass it to.
I've had this actually happen to me, and I could probably I'll share the story. I don't mind sharing the story for people experience as well. But you know, this property community in Scotland, such a small community, you piss somebody off and you've not got morals and standing, and you don't just respect people's work that they're doing, and then you soon get shunned out. Someone, you know, went behind my back after I got the offer accepted, went behind and went directly to the agent and got it at that price, and I got obviously missed my fee. But good luck getting a deal off me or any of my network, or if anyone asks for a recommendation, if you're a trustworthy guy, because you're not. So it's such a small pool that Yes, people can get NDA signed. If anyone doesn't know what that is, I think someone's asked a question there. A non-disclosure agreement. You could do it, but I tend to find that you can kind of take people by face value as well all the time.
What does that mean? Basically, they can't share that you. They have to keep the information that you share with them to themselves, and they can't.
Yeah, that's right, and it particularly goes more for off-market deals rather than on-market deals, because they're going to be able to see it on the market. So yeah, usually get an NDA signed if it was off-market. Like, again, take people for face value. If they want to try and screw you and go behind your back, then they won't get any more deals.
That's another point that's, I think, a couple of people have brought up in the chat there as well. Because I sourced property once upon a time, and I'm actually starting to do it again, just because I've had people ask me down in London and stuff just to buy properties on yield and things. But the point is, does a property have to be off market if it's coming through a sourcing agent? And my answer to that is no. And if you're a reputable sourcing agent and you're working with the proper type of clients, they're paying you a fee for a reason. And the fee is for your knowledge of the area. You're saying this is a property that will rent out. It's a good property. I've viewed it. This is the refurb cost, whatever. The fact that it's on the market or not is almost irrelevant. They may be not in the area. They don't know the area. They're dependent on you to point them in the direction of a good property. Or maybe they are in the area and they haven't got the time because they're doing other things, or they've had a family, or, you know, I've had sourcing clients who know the area better than I do because they've lived there their whole lives. But they've now taken a back seat because they've started a family. They're happy that I've got the knowledge. I can point them in the direction of a good property. Some are off market, some are on market. So it's not necessarily a bad thing that the things advertise on Rightmove.
Not at all. And definitely the deals that we can find on market, again, like, we know the knowledge, we've built up that relationships with the estate agents, the viewing agents, and people may not necessarily get the deal that we are going in at. So when we're reviewing the numbers, the comparables for what's on the street, etc., like, I know with the refurb and looking at the refurb team as well, exactly how much that's going to cost to get the proper end value. I know exactly what I'm going in for the offer, and most people not necessarily are probably going to be that cheeky. A lot of people don't feel comfortable going in at certain offers as well. But again, we've built up a really good reputation in the area, and that's where we're getting some of the best deals from as well.
Yeah, no, you guys, sorry, on you go, Steph, on you.
I was just saying she's the negotiating queen for deals. Don't want to go up against her for negotiations.
Brilliant. I mean, you guys are killing it up there. I can see that, you know, and like Stephen tells me as well, some of the stories up there, brilliant. I think we need to, obviously, as I said right at the start, we don't sugarcoat. We don't try and sell a dream because we've got nothing to sell. So, you know, if you are in Glasgow and Edinburgh, Dundee, Kessar as well, you know, you are finding it very competitive out there. You know, if you're going out there and you're starting off as a deal sourcer, it can be done. But, you know, just today I went out to a viewing, and it was the owner who was doing the viewing, and I said, you know, been much interest in the place. He says, oh, aye. He says, I've already had offers. Home report 90,000. I says, all right. I says, so he said what his offer was. He says, I've already had an offer of £100,000, so £10,000 over the home report. It's going to a closing date. Do you know what I mean? That's normal now in Glasgow. So, you know, I just I like to put that out there because I don't want to give anybody false expectations how, you know, difficult things are. Market is hot just now, guys, no doubt about it. All right.
Yep, if you get good at finding deals now in this hot market, you'll be phenomenally good at finding them when the market crashes and pops. Yeah,
and exactly, and that's that's a great point, Stephen. And you know, one of the other big questions is, when's the market going to drop? You know, when price is going to crash? And I'm not scared about that. I'm wanting it to drop. We're wanting it to drop, so it starts getting a bit easier to find deals. You know what I mean? I mean, we're in a lucky situation where people who are speaking here, we've managed to accumulate a portfolio, obviously, so we've built in a bit of equity over the boom time here. But certainly, you know, if things drop, it doesn't concern me much at all. The way that the lending is still relatively cheap, albeit there's talk of interest rate rises, etc. We'll not get too technical in this call, guys, because it is aimed at the beginners. Any more questions from Kessar? For Kessar Salimi, based up in Dundee, he knows his stuff about the mortgages, and he's also investing up in Dundee. And any questions for Gary Wales as well, because Gary's obviously got the service accommodation, which is an interesting model. And
there was a question for Kessar there about do lenders object to getting mortgages on flats over shops?
Yeah, it's a good question from Malcolm there, Sean. So yeah, that's definitely something to consider. Properties above commercial, not all lenders lend above these types of properties. So really you want to be kind of engaging with your broker and checking, first of all, if it's acceptable. And in general terms, if it is acceptable, retail units, offices, they're kind of the most liked ones. And the ones that lenders don't like are pubs, bookies, restaurants, takeaways. But you can pretty much get lending on anything, you know, at a cost. So, you know, even above sort of restaurants and stuff like that, you know, fast food, you can still get lending. And also, it doesn't always have to be above. It could also be kind of, you know, adjacent to it. You know, the property could be next door, that sort of thing as well. So always kind of check on Google Maps as well and kind of look up and down the street to see what commercial properties there, substations, lots of different things that can potentially affect the lending capability, you know, possibilities for the property.
Is the restaurant the takeaway thing, Kessar? Am I right in saying it's because of the fire hazard, or the perception of fire hazard over a kitchen, basically?
Yeah, two things. Yeah, fire hazard, the smell as well, that could affect potentially the type of tenants that you might get in the property, and then the resaleability of the property as well. So should you go bankrupt or get into financial difficulty, can the lender actually sell that property on the open market at a fair price? So I would always budget that into the deal. And, you know, if you are going to buy above commercial, in particular above sort of noisy or smelly places, they normally call them, you know, make sure you kind of get in, you know, a bit of a discount there if you can, you know, so you're kind of building in a bit of equity there.
Cool. Nick, there was also a question about rent to rent and potentially serviced accommodation. I don't know if that's a question that Gary could tackle.
Did you do any rent to rents, Gary, or how did you structure things?
We've not done any rent to rents, Nick, but the serviced accommodation model, we never had the holiday market. We went for like blue collar stuff, so contracts, insurers, companies. So that's been our market. So it's actually been really great because you're not really looking at much different stock from a traditional buy-to-let, so to speak. Just looking at houses, really, ex-local. That's kind of been our fit. So it's actually been good having contractors there, and it's almost like giving you a shopping list, you know, because they're looking for this, this, and this. And then obviously off your own occupancy level, you know exactly what's working well and, you know, what's not. So it's been good. It's been brilliant for us. You know, we just started that last year and it just went, you know, from strength to strength. We've got a few going, and so we're just going to add to that. But yeah, no, it's been really good. It's you know, because, you know, serviced accommodation, you sometimes think of it as, you know, is it an actual like whole building or that, but it's not. It's just a normal house, really. But
there's a good lesson in there as well, Gary, because if it doesn't work, or if we have another lockdown or whatever and you don't get any bookings, then you can always put it onto a normal residential let as well, you know?
Yeah. And the thing is, the reason that we went into that field as well was because the market was heating up last year. You know, we didn't want to just say, well, we're going to stop buying or find out a new strategy. In a sense, it was just like, well, what can we do with that? You know, because if everybody's wanting buy-to-lets, you just got to see, you know, how can you offer slightly more on them? How do they cash flow more? And that's why we went into that field. So we basically got a few companies now that we want X things. So just keep our eyes open for that. And it's kind of like a shopping list.
I mean, it is. See the cash flow figures. I mean, I was absolutely raking it in for a while there, doing the serviced apartments in Glasgow. But see the stress of it. It was too. It wasn't. I had 3 kids. You know, I had my 3rd child at the time. When I quit it, I was like, this is just too much. People arriving from all over the world. They don't have a clue, you know, they're phoning you every minute for every little bit, because I was concentrating on, you know, it's tourists pretty much, or people coming, you know, for short term to Glasgow, and, you know, it's every little thing. You're basically a hotel concierge service, you know, and they were things like the batteries are not working in the TV remote control and stuff like that. And, you know, all sorts of stuff. Well, so I had to jack it.
Yeah, no, I mean that's another side of it. Definitely in the big cities, that's another option. But what, you know, I'm a bit like Stephen. I like outsourcing as much as I can. So I'll make sure that, you know, we've got a company that operates that for us. And plus it's slightly different with the blue collar stuff because they're in there a lot longer. So it's like months at a time as opposed to days. And that's where you get that churn and that wear and tear. So it's, you know, it's a bit better.
Yeah, they're a little less low maintenance as well. Just like they just come in from their work, don't they? And they just want to like just chill out. They're not like looking for problems. And I had somebody try to sue me for a radiator that fell off a wall, and they basically said that it injured them. And I got a, you know, like on the radio you hear the Digby Brown solicitors, you know, like the no win no fees. I got a letter through from somebody trying to sue me. I was like, after that, I was, no, I'm out of this.
Like, I think we're missing something very crucial and a strategy that we've not really touched on. My favourite strategy, flipping properties. Now, everyone's talking about how difficult it is to get deals, and, you know, you're trying to get a below market value deal. But the thing is with flips is you don't need to get below market value. You could be offering, like Nick was saying, that, you know, they're looking at a property and offers over 90 grand and someone's offering 100. You could on a flip, you don't need to bother about the end value. It's going to be the sale price. And right now, people are paying a premium for a very well done up property and a really high spec. So if you're getting a premium on that sale price, you're always basing your numbers based on your end value or your sale price on the back end. So you can pay over the asking price for properties right now for flips. It's a strategy I've done, I think 4 or 5 last year, and some of the profits were 80 grand each for 2 of them actually. So there's deals out there and you can do them. And if that's you starting out, and you can joint venture as well to build up the cash pot, and, you know, somebody funds it and you have the experience to go and do the refurb or project manage the refurb, then that's definitely another strategy that's hot right now, and you can capitalize on it right now.
You flip properties without even doing work to them, mate. That's the killer strategy.
It's taken 15 years to get to that place, mate.
You'd fancy a few more of them.
Oh, sorry, the ones flipping straight to auction. Yeah, that's another way. I sold a 2 last year that didn't even do any work to it. One I spent an hour wrecking it and sent it to auction, and someone picked it up for a buy-to-let portfolio, and I think I paid 17 grand more than I paid for it 3 weeks earlier. And I sold a cottage to someone that just came up my workshop, and they were looking for their first flip, but I made 38 grand on it by buying on the Friday and selling to them on the Monday. But they're going to make probably 40 grand profit on a flip. So the deals are still out there, but it's all based on your end value.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the main message is that nothing's easy, guys. It's all hard work, but there's definitely rewards out there. If you want this property stuff, then there's definitely opportunities out there, and anybody can do it. Look at all of us here, you know, like none of us, well, I'm not speaking for anybody else, but, you know, I didn't get any qualifications. I didn't go to university or anything like that. You know, so you don't need a lot of intelligence to do the property stuff, that's for sure. Okay, so we've got 5 minutes left, guys. The last 5 minutes.
There was one last question there that came up, Nick, that maybe might be a good one to close the night with. Are auctions a good source to buy properties from, was the question.
Yeah, we've got a podcast on that, Stephen. We've got an auction podcast.
We've got an auction podcast. We also brought in Ross Harper as well. We've done a couple of talking about auctions. It's buyers beware with auctions. So I think we'll just kind of keep it at that. Look back at the episode of the podcast that we do go into a lot of detail, but yeah, I always find there's a reason at the auction. Doesn't mean there's not opportunities there, but be very cautious, because when the hammer falls and you've won the property, you pay 10% up front and you're tied to misses there and then. So you'd have your finance lined up, or cash finance lined up in advance to buy it, because you need to complete within usually 28 days as well.
Absolutely. So always get the legal pack, guys. That's the number one thing. They should be providing you with a full legal pack. If you don't understand what's going on in the legal pack, then get your solicitor to look over it. And like Stephen says, the other thing is financing. You can't buy with, I mean, Kessar, you know, you just can't buy with a buy-to-let mortgage for auction purchases, can you? It's got to be bridging lending or cash, yeah?
Yeah, either bridging or cash, yeah, that's right.
Right.
As we kind of round up, do you think it would be worthwhile going through the hosts and letting them kind of give their kind of final tips on, if you're getting started out, what they would recommend mostly to do to get started?
Yeah, absolutely. Do you want to kick off?
To me, get a value proposition to the marketplace. I've never ever had my own money in the deals, and I found it's a skill set that I developed quite early on. That even the stuff that I did last year, I think there was 19 added to the buy-to-let portfolio and 4 or 5 flips. I never used any of my money on it. because I find that the getting the education and becoming good at sourcing deals and spotting opportunities was where it's at. So get the right education, or go out and get good at that skill set where it adds a value proposition to the market.
Great stuff. I would say one thing we've not talked about is actually getting a job in property. So I've created a job for myself as I'm a letting agent. So, you know, I would class myself as a self-employed. So I've created myself a job in property. And for me, it's brought about opportunities. It's brought about potential. I mean, a lot of my landlords and people that I manage property for are quite, you know, they're decent high net worth individuals that have got money to invest. So if that, I've proved they've trusted me now managing their property, their assets are highly prized assets, you know, they can trust me 100%. I've built that relationship up over 3 years. If it comes to the point where I find a flip or a joint venture partnership, you know, I've got a huge network now of people with money to reach out to. So, you know, don't disregard that, and don't say, you know, there's a few letting agents on here. Angus, how you doing, mate? Angus is a letting agent. Estate agency, do you know what I mean? If you're young, go and work for an estate agency, learn how the property market works. There's people that are good investors here. Gary Wells, there's somebody else here who is also an estate agent as well. There's a guy called Fraser Kelly in Glasgow as well. He's just joined Keller Williams. It's quite low barrier to entry. You don't need a huge amount of capital to get started, and it gives you that experience in the industry, and you can network as well. That would be my tips too. Anybody else?
I go next. Yeah, I go next, Nick. Just I won't leave you hanging. Don't worry. I think if I was to give advice to someone starting, it would be very careful. Not be very careful, but just I would be conscious who I work with. When you're working with the right people, the right clients, it makes things very, very easy. Find people that you're comfortable. So like someone brought up a point there about sourcing. You know, how do you kind of pitch sourcing and all that kind of stuff? But if you've got a client that you've built a proper relationship with, and you understand what they're, so like I've got one sourcing client now, one client, and I'm basically building a business for the year around that. I can go and view a property tomorrow, and I guarantee you, if I think it's for him, he will buy it. So like I basically know going out tomorrow what he's looking for. And just I've always found working with fewer people of higher quality makes life very, very easy.
That's great advice, man. Great advice. Kessar?
Yeah, Nick, I think I'll go on the sort of the lending point of view. I think kind of finance is kind of the lifeblood of being able to get into property investment. So, you know, sort of deposit where that's coming from, and then, you know, make sure you're in the right financial position to be able to get lending. So speaking to, you know, sort of a broker early up front, and kind of, you know, getting them to assess your situation. If there isn't any issues with your credit report, you can get all that sort of ironed out, and then you can be in a good position to kind of get lending going forward. And like you said, speaking to letting agents as well, I think they're a great point of contact starting out as well, because you might be looking at properties, but getting advice from them on which streets are the right streets to invest in, and which properties rent out well as well.
Great stuff, man. Gary?
I'll probably go back to what are you on here for, and you know what are you looking for to get out of this? Because if you look at all the guys on here tonight, you know, nobody's going to say it's easy, you know, and you can sit at your kitchen table to any time at night, and you can still be working out stuff. So I think you've got to kind of know your pain point or know what's driving this forward, because you really need to know that. Otherwise, you just go through the motions and you just say that there's no deals out there, or you just wash it away. But something's got to come out of you, whether it's, you know, out of desperation or it's inspiration. Something, you have to have something to get you out of bed early in the morning, or go to bed at midnight because you're working on numbers. You know, I think you really, really need to have a serious look at that and just have it with you. And just, I'm a big believer in all that. You know, you've got to be reminded of that on a daily basis. What are you getting out of bed for? Who's it for? What's the end goal? You know, you need to know all that stuff. And it sounds a bit, you know, a bit out there, but all of us guys that are on here are absolutely, that's what we know. You know, that's the one thing that we know. We've got a why. And I think you really need to pin that on your wall and know it off by heart.
Great stuff. Steph and Jade, I don't know if you just want to go one at a time.
Gary, I was literally, I'd written down start with why. So you've just stolen my whole topic.
Oh.
Thanks, Gary. So off the top of my head, quickly for tips. I mean, for us, I mean, and it looks easy, guys, and it is so not, and it'll take a long time if you've never done it before, but social media can be your friend. I know it's a huge concept sometimes to put your life out there, your journey, you know, everything. And it's all about who knows you. So you have to really do that. If property is something that you seriously want to do, if it's like a business that you want to scale, people need to know you to be able to do business with you. If you want to do joint ventures with people need to know what it is that you want to do. So that was something for us right back at the start that it was so hard, and it still is hard now, but obviously if you keep doing it consistently, it gets easier and easier. And I mean, you are going to come up against people who think they know better, or trolls that troll you, and you've got to kind of grow a thick skin to these things. But if it's something that you desperately want to do, you want to escape the 9 to 5, you've got a bigger purpose, you want to, you know, do more, and property is what you want to do, then I would suggest definitely having a social media strategy and pushing out content for sure.
Nice one, great stuff. And Steph, has Jade stolen your tip as well?
No, we always echo each other, don't we? But no, like going from what Gary's saying, I think that's really important, and what Jade's saying about the social as well. And then once you've got your why down, I think you need to definitely get the right education. I know like property education can be bashed, but a lot of really good property investors and developers have started from there. But I think it's more about actually getting, like I was saying, the right education. And that's what we really enjoyed about Stephen's course as well, that he actually was talking about the real deals that he's doing as well on that course, rather than more of the theory-based training that is spoken about on some others. So it really kind of...
Oh, you're on mute.
I'm playing with you, Stevie boy. I'm playing with you. Kidding on. No, that's you back on, Steph. That's you back on. Sorry.
I don't know what you stopped me.
No, you were saying that Stephen's got an amazing course.
Stephen has an amazing course, and that's all I'm saying, basically.
Thank
No,
you,
but I'm
Get muted again.
Genuinely, I think property education is like worth its weight in gold if you go in the right course, because you learn like so many strategies. Like we wouldn't have the sourcing without it, you know. So
absolutely, 100%. Gillian and Gillian Green, last but not least.
Yeah, for me, I agree with everything the rest of the guys have said, but kind of with all that, take focused action. I see it quite often where like there's so many strategies, there's so many things that people are doing. Like work out what your why is, get your goal set in stone, like what are you doing this for, and work back from there. Work out what actions are going to make the difference and focus on those actions and do them consistently. Don't get distracted. Like we're a massive advocate for social media, but I think you can go down a rabbit hole. It's great to be inspired by people, but don't get distracted. Focus and take that action that's going to make the difference. Action,
100%. And there's so many people that just go from course to course. They read the books, they spend hours on social media scrolling. They just waste their lives away and don't take the action. So that is the huge value bomb. That's a brilliant point to end on, guys. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. It's been great seeing all your faces on here. Did anyone get a selfie? Did anyone get a picture for social media, by the way? Yeah, Paul, right, okay, cool. Paul, just tag us, will you? Anybody else, just take a picture now, tag us on Instagram. We'll share it on our stories. Somebody said social media. That is absolutely 100% the way to build investor relationships as well.
Can I just add something that just to finish, because I
Yeah.
covered it to Jill, and this isn't a slight, but there's 100 people on the call, and there's probably only about less than a quarter that have their cameras on. So building like engagement over online, it's difficult to have that engagement. You guys have given time, but it's just so much easier if you have your camera on. You can get to know who the person is a little bit better just by having that. So
aye.
Yeah.
To be fair, I'm sitting in my boxer shorts here, by the way, but
really didn't need to know that.
I'm not going to show you that, mate. But aye, it's all good, guys. Listen, reach out to us. We want to connect with as many people as possible, build this amazing community. Get over to Facebook, join the Facebook group. There's good discussions happening there. Loads of people that want to help. There's a few ball bags as well, but we just block them or ignore them. So don't worry about that. And listen, we're doing every month now, we're doing a meetup. So it'll be somewhere near you if you live in Scotland. We've got Aberdeen, we've got Dundee, we've got Glasgow and Edinburgh. It's £20 for a ticket. We're not making any money out of that, I'll guarantee you. Basically, we're going to have a cracking night out at the end of the year with any profits, but we'll try and invite as many as possible, right? But no, it's for the money that we accumulate for that. It's for the venues. The venues are expensive. They're decent venues, apart from Edinburgh, but we want to try and upgrade there a wee bit. We're going to get a better venue in Edinburgh, guys. But, you know, they're decent hotels. They're nice settings. You come along, you get a coffee. We try and speak to everybody on an even playing field. There's no kind of I'm better than you sort of thing, and we try and just kind of get everybody to share and help each other out as well. So the next one's on Wednesday, the 2nd of February, a couple of weeks time. If you go to Eventbrite, you can book your tickets to there. We've got some cracking speakers every month. We have inspirational speakers who have either, you know, they might be starting out their journey, but you might relate to that, or else they might have built amazing portfolios as well. So Stephen, sorry, I took over the mic there. Do you want to end?
Excellent, mate. Just that, you know, in Aberdeen, we actually serve alcohol as well. So we actually have a fun night, not just teas and coffees. So everyone's welcome. We've got Charlotte Edwards, who shared her story in the podcast a couple of months back. Phenomenal story. So if anyone wants to come up to Aberdeen, more than welcome. It's myself and the girls from the Property Duo that host Aberdeen one.
Brilliant stuff, guys.
And I also noticed on the questions that we did have a lot of questions come through. It was really engaging call tonight, and I do apologise to the ones that we kind of couldn't get through, a lot of them, but we will do another one. And if not, come along to one of the network events, and I'm sure you can ask the hosts or any of the speakers, and they'll be happy to answer any of your questions.
Yeah, guys. So that's it for tonight, and we'll maybe do another one maybe in 6 months' time. You know, just it's always good getting everybody on the online one as well, just to kind of keep the momentum flowing. I'm going to give you a wee, just to end on there. Podcast is out every Wednesday. There should be another episode coming out either tonight or tomorrow. Sometimes we miss a day, but we're usually on it most weeks. This is the speaker lineup. There may be a few changes in there, guys. So I know that for the Edinburgh one, I think it is, there's a change to that speaker, but that gives you an idea of what's going on. And there might be a few things that we need to change in there, but it gives you a rough idea of what to expect. All right. There's no after party, guys. So good night and God bless.